Welcome to Soviet Britain, a place where decline is sold as progress, and where the people live in blissful ignorance by denying the reality around them. At the center of this modern utopia stands the Commune of Parliament, where Premier Keir Starmer rules with an iron fist. He has surrounded himself with the best and brightest of the British political class. But unlike other governments, theirs has little interest in the economy, in national security, or in the health and prosperity of the people. No, their first priority is far less ambitious: the managed decline of civilization and the obsessive policing of thought. To this end, two new institutions lead the nation: the Department of Permitted Opinions and the Ministry of Acceptable Jokes. Through these organs of state, speech is reorganized, categorized, and, when necessary, erased. Witness a concerned mother posting furious comments online after a knife attack on young children. In Soviet Britain, such crimes are met with the full weight of the law. The punishment is severe. Keir Starmer's secret police detain her in the dead of night and haul her off to the gulag. Britain's comedy scene is long dead. The government delivered the punchline, and it came with handcuffs. Comedy here must now pass through censors like airport security, stripped of danger, wit, or edge, until only the blandest jokes remain. Jokes so safe, nobody could possibly laugh at them. North of the capital, the vast and beautiful Yorkshire countryside was once known as God's own country. Today it has been rebranded Keir's country, headquarters of the National Re-Education Network. Here, the ignorant masses are taught that the abuse they suffer at the hands of the political class is, in fact, good for them. Beyond re-education, the government has pioneered a new economic policy. It begins with a redefinition of the rich. In Soviet Britain, anyone who can afford a house is rich, and the rich must pay. A 150% tax rate ensures that citizens hand over more to the state than they are allowed to keep. It is presented as sound economics, a bold, groundbreaking strategy in which prosperity is achieved through poverty. The housing crisis has also been solved. Citizens are now provided with state-issued pods, barely large enough to move inside, but containing all the basic necessities the state has decided you could ever want. Here is the future: a pod to sleep in, insects to eat, and a screen for streaming government-approved entertainment. It is the pinnacle of egalitarianism. In a land where every symbol of national pride has been dismantled, one outlet remains: football. The only permitted form of patriotism, chanted in stadiums under the watchful eyes of police. And though the England team never win, celebration is mandatory. Citizens who fail to cheer with sufficient enthusiasm are subject to investigation. The scoreboard may read 0, but the applause must be unanimous. And to power this utopia, the government has appointed a new energy minister, Anatoly Dyatlov. Imported from the Soviet past, his plan is simple: litter the country with second-hand RBMK nuclear reactors, cost-cutting models acquired cheap and described as the safest reactors in the world. Across the countryside, gray concrete towers rise like monuments to hubris. Dyatlov assures Premier Starmer that failure is physically impossible, a claim destined to be tested with consequences beyond imagination. For now, the reactors hum quietly, Britain's new heartbeat. But in this system, denial is more reliable than safety. Thus, the nation marches forward, its pride reduced to football, its countryside swallowed by slums, and its future entrusted to reactors long past their expiry date. Every empire leaves behind its ruins. In Soviet Britain, the ruins arrive early. Great works of engineering collapse not through war but through neglect. The Humber Bridge buckles into the estuary. London Bridge falls, not in song, but in reality. The London Eye spins as it burns, a wheel of fire against the skyline. Even Stonehenge is dismantled, its ancient stones repurposed for the construction of housing pods. The regime calls it recycling. Progress achieved by cannibalizing the past. The monarchy too has been abolished, but Charles is spared, not for loyalty to the people, but because he is as communist as the regime itself. Much of his land is confiscated and absorbed into the holdings of Premier Starmer. Buckingham Palace is no longer a symbol of the crown. It is the new seat of government, draped in red banners. Charles contents himself with a single estate, where he entertains himself daily by shooting peasants from the balcony and drinking scotch. And where dissent once drew ridicule, it now draws chains. The Tower of London is no longer a tourist attraction. It has been restored to its original purpose, a fortress for political prisoners, journalists, comedians. Anyone guilty of speaking unlicensed words is locked behind its medieval walls. Outside, tourists gather still, but now only to watch the parades of the condemned. But no institution captures the spirit of Soviet Britain more faithfully than the BBC, the state broadcaster. Once known for impartial journalism, it now serves as the nation's primary propaganda arm, a comforting voice reminding citizens that their suffering is both imaginary and entirely deserved. Presenters read from a government-approved script, their faces frozen into expressions somewhere between fear and professional courtesy. Reports of shortages are reframed as voluntary simplicity. Energy blackouts are celebrated as darkness initiatives to reduce harmful optimism. And the collapse of major infrastructure is dismissed as a controlled structural liberation event. The BBC has become the nation's campfire, a place to gather and be gently scolded by the state. Tonight's top story is no exception. A dangerous extremist has been apprehended in Leeds, declares the presenter, barely blinking. CCTV footage shows a man in a shopping center holding what appears to be a plastic butter knife, a prohibited Class 3 terror device. Possession of an unlicensed utensil is one of the gravest of crimes in Soviet Britain. Anything sharper than a government briefing must be tightly controlled. A team of thought enforcement officers tackle the man to the ground. Within hours, he is sentenced to 10 years of hard labor in the most feared of Britain's correctional facilities. And so our story travels north. Once celebrated as the most beautiful landscape in the kingdom, the Scottish Highlands have been repurposed into the largest gulag complex in Western Europe. Stretching from Inverness to the Isle of Skye, the Scottish labor camps are a triumph of central planning and seasonal misery. The government describes them as Britain's most productive contribution to the global punishment economy. Even the locals admit this is the first time the Highlands have been used for anything productive. Prisoners work 16-hour shifts cutting peat bricks, assembling wind turbines that don't spin, and writing apology letters for infractions they haven't yet committed. But the true terror of the Highland Gulag comes at dusk, when the guards gather the condemned and lead them to the water's edge. For this is the site of Scotland's most ancient, and now government-sanctioned, method of punishment. At Loch Ness, prisoners undergo a timeless ritual, the Judgment of Nessie. Each accused is bound, weighed with government-approved stones, and cast into the loch. There are only two possible outcomes. If the Loch Ness monster devours them, they are declared guilty of antisocial behavior and posthumously scolded. If they drown, they are found innocent and receive a full government apology, generally lost on them due to being deceased. But even the Scottish climate cannot compare to the achievements of the British Weather Authority, an organization created to solve a great national crisis, the risk of the population feeling too cheerful. Using a sophisticated array of clouds imported from the Baltic states, the Weather Authority ensures the sky remains permanently overcast, drizzly, and emotionally oppressive. Sunshine is strictly regulated. Too much of it might lead to happiness, which could lead to optimism, which in turn could lead to dangerous thoughts such as expecting things to improve. The nation now enjoys the exact same weather every day. 10 degrees, gray, light rain. And so we arrive at the final chapter of managed decline, energy. Across the country, Dyatlov's fleet of second-hand RBMK reactors hums away, monuments to arrogance dressed as progress. Premier Starmer asks if disaster is possible. Dyatlov replies with certainty, RBMK reactors do not explode, Comrade Premier. It is physically impossible. But impossibility is fragile. One by one, the reactors fail. Concrete domes crack. Cooling towers shatter. The hum of energy becomes the roar of fire. From Cornwall to the Highlands, a chain reaction engulfs the island. The nation is transformed, not into a green utopia, but into a glowing wasteland. Yet even here, denial is enforced. Broadcasts insist the reactors are stable. Citizens coughing blood are told their loyalty levels remain satisfactory. The slogans survive the blast. Safety is freedom. Progress is decline. Denial is reality. If you want a picture of the future, imagine the dull nib of a bureaucrat's pen, blotting out human hope as it scratches across endless form forever.